The wedding march had been playing for 3 minutes when He Jingheng's white moonlight burst into the church in tears. Without a second thought, he let go of my hand and sprinted after that white silhouette. Below the altar, 300 guests broke into frenzied whispers as camera flashes strove to capture my pathetic state. Kneeling there in disarray, I ripped off my veil, glanced at the hundreds of people gloating in the pews and said in a steady voice, "Since everyone is already here, this wedding is still happening." The wedding march had been playing for 3 minutes. I was standing at the altar in a custom-made gown worth 280,000 yuan, my hand resting on He Jingheng's arm. Just as the priest reached the part about if anyone objects to this marriage, the church doors were flung open. Tang Tian stood there in a white sundress, tears streaming down her face, looking like a gardenia wilted by the rain. "Jingheng," she cried. I felt the muscles in his arm instantly tense. He Jingheng turned his head. I saw his Adam's apple bob. "Tian Tian, I can't stand the thought of you marrying someone else." Tang Tian's voice echoed through the chapel. "I regret it, I'm back." 300 guests turned their heads in unison, and the flashes began to strobe. My knuckles turned white as I gripped my bouquet, but I kept a smile plastered on my face. I was Jiu Siyuan, a top-tier Manda lawyer. I'd negotiate the terms even if the sky was falling. "Jingheng," I called softly. He pulled his arm away. "Siyuan, I'm sorry." He didn't even look at me. His gaze was glued to Tang Tian. "I have to go after her. Now." He turned and strode down the red carpet, the tails of his suit cutting a decisive arc through the air. Tang Tian threw herself into his arms weeping, and the two of them rushed out of the church together. Leaving the room in an uproar, I stood on the altar, my veil fluttering in the draft. People in the crowd started laughing, taking photos and whispering, "Even lawyer Gu has a day like this." I heard she chased him for 3 years to get the spot, and now, president, he never loved her. Everyone in the circle knows that. I stripped off the veil and crumpled it into a ball. The corset of the gown was so tight I could barely breathe, but I stood bone straight. My gaze swept across the room and landed on a man in the very last row. He was wearing a faded grey-blue suit with a frayed collar, but he sat as straight as a mast. This was Shenyang, the son of the shipping king whom He Jingheng had forced into bankruptcy just 3 days ago. He was likely here just to see the wreckage. I picked up the microphone. "Since everyone is already here, this wedding is still happening." The room went dead silent. I gathered the skirts of my gown and walked down the red carpet. My heels clicked against the marble floor. Clack, 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 like a countdown. I stopped in front of Shenyang and looked down at him. "Mr. Shen, marry me." He looked up. His features were deep set, with a faint scar at the corner of his eye. I had seen him 3 days ago at the bankruptcy hearing, the day He Jingheng personally dismantled the shipping empire his father had built over 30 years. "Lawyer Gu," he said, his voice low, "You're joking. I hold 1/3 of the debt claims for He Group shipping." I whispered, "I can help you get back your father's ship, the Voyager." His pupils contracted. "Now, right now." I pressed the microphone to his lips. "Say I do." Shenyang stood up. He was a full head taller than me. 300 pairs of eyes were locked on us as the flashes merged into a wall of light. He took the mic, a playful, cynical smirk tugging at his lips. "Lawyer Gu," he said, "pleasure doing business with you." I turned back to the priest. "Continue. This isn't standard procedure." The priest stammered. "I paid triple for the venue." I stared him down. "Continue." 5 minutes later, Shenyang and I exchanged rings. His fingers were rough, calloused from years of handling cables. The ring was snatched off a groomsman's hand, a silver band engraved with someone else's name on the inside. "Miss Jiu Siyuan, do you take Mr. Shenyang to be your husband?" "I do." "Mr. Shenyang, do you take Miss Jiu Siyuan to be your wife?" He looked at me with a gaze that was searching, calculating, and filled with something I couldn't quite read. "I do." The crowd erupted. I heard people shouting she's crazy, others making phone calls, and even more flashes going off. I didn't care. The wedding over, I took Shenyang's hand and walked out of the church. A black Mercedes was waiting outside. My assistant, Xiao Lin, stood by the car door, face pale. "Gu, president, he is calling. Block him." Miss Tang posted a photo on social media saying president, he chased her to the airport. "It's the #1 trending topic right now. Buy it out," I said, stepping into the car. "All of it." Shenyang followed me inside, the door shut, sealing out the noise. "Lawyer Gu," he leaned back against the seat. "Now can you tell me why me?" "Because you hate He Jingheng," I said, taking off my headpiece, "and I want him dead." "Just that." Just that, he suddenly laughed, the sound echoing in the cabin. Fine, he said, then I'll wait to see how lawyer Gu makes He Jinghung die. My phone rang, He Jinghung's name flashed on the screen. I answered and put it on speaker. Siyuan. His voice held its usual tenderness as if nothing had happened. What kind of scene are you making? I'll be back as soon as I drop Tian Tian at the airport. We can redo the wedding. He Jinghung, I interrupted. We're done. Don't be reckless, you know I just married Shenyang. There was a 3-second silence on the other end. What did you say? You heard me. I hung up and looked out the window. The church spire glowed gold in the sunset, looking like a sword. Shenyang suddenly reached out and brushed a stray piece of tinsel from my hair. Gu Siyuan, he said. Welcome to hell. I turned to him. Hell? He Jinghung's hell. His eyes were dark and deep, and our battlefield. The car started. In the rearview mirror, the crowd at the church entrance grew smaller and smaller until they were just a black speck, vanishing into the traffic. I toyed with the silver ring. The inside was engraved with "Love You Forever," likely some stranger's vow, now sitting on my finger like a sarcastic prophecy. He Jinghung, I thought, this is only the beginning. The Civil Affairs Bureau was nearly empty. Shenyang and I sat on a bench, a one-person gap between us. He gripped the queue ticket so hard. His knuckles were white. Regretting it, I asked, calculating how long it'll take He Jinghung to storm in. He checked his watch. Given his personality, 40 minutes, then we have 30 left. The machine called our number. Behind the window was a middle-aged woman who glanced at us, her eyes lingering on my wedding gown for a moment. Marriage? Yes. Household registers, IDs. She paused. Honey, your outfit. Just got a divorce, I said. Now we're remarrying. She shot a suspicious look at Shen Yang. He didn't blink. Just a spat. We were emotional. When the seal was stamped, I heard Shen Yang take a very faint breath. The red booklets were pushed toward us. I flipped mine open. The two people in the photo were expressionless, looking like they were in the middle of a business negotiation. In truth, that's exactly what it was. Stepping out of the bureau, a wave of heat hit us. The August sun was brutal, and the lining of my gown was already soaked through. Shenyang took off his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders, the movement as natural as if he'd done it 1,000 times. Where to next? He asked. Hotel to change. I checked my phone. Then the hospital. The hospital. My father. Shenyang's expression shifted. 3 days ago, his father had committed suicide by jumping from a building. The news had been everywhere. He likely didn't expect my father to be in the same hospital. In the car, I gave a brief explanation. Stroke 3 months ago. He can't speak. He Jinghung visits him every week, more dutiful than a real son. Until the wedding. Until the wedding, Shenyang fell silent. The scenery outside changed from skyscrapers to old neighborhoods, and the hospital building came into view. I changed into a professional suit Xiao Lin brought over, black blazer, white shirt, hair pulled into a bun. The woman in the mirror had sharp, piercing eyes, a world away from the abandoned bride of half an hour ago. Gu, Xiao Lin handed me a folder. The debt transfer agreement for He group shipping is ready. Shenyang. I turned to him. Sign it. He took the pen and signed his name in the Party B column. His handwriting was forceful, the final stroke dragging long like a scar. Now, I tucked the documents into my bag. You own 15% of the debt claims for He group shipping. Combined with mine, that's 43%. What are you planning? Bankruptcy restructuring. I pressed the elevator button. I'm going to make He Jinghung crawl and beg. The elevator doors opened and a commotion drifted from the end of the hall. My heart sank. It was He Jinghung's voice, carrying that familiar, breezy warmth. Uncle, don't worry, I'll explain things to Siyuan. I strode over and pushed the hospital room door open. He Jinghung was sitting by the bed, peeling an apple. He had changed clothes, not into his wedding suit, but a navy blue one my father liked. On the nightstand sat a vase of lilies, a variety my father was allergic to. Siyuan. He looked up, his smile freezing on his face. How did you? Just got married. I held up the red booklet. Brought my husband to see Dad. Shenyang stepped out from behind me. He Jinghung's eyes changed. It was subtle. The smile remained on his lips, but the temperature in his gaze plummeted to freezing. Mr. Shen. He stood up, apple and knife still in hand. Congratulations. Likewise, Shenyang said. The performance president he gave at the wedding was spectacular. The atmosphere turned to stone. My father lay on the bed, his eyes darting back and forth, a wheezing sound coming from his throat. I walked over and took his withered hand. Dad. This is Shenyang, my husband. My father's fingers tightened, his nails digging into my palm. He stared at Shenyang, then at He Jingheng, his eyes suddenly turning red. He Jingheng, I said without looking back. Those lilies in your hand, my dad is allergic to them. Is he? He looked down. I thought uncle liked. He likes gladiolus. I turned around. You've brought lilies for 3 years and he's endured them for 3 years just like I endured your Tang Tian for 3 years. He Jingheng's expression finally cracked. Siyuan, we can talk. Talk about what? I cut him off. Talk about how you made me a laughingstock in front of 300 people. Or talk about how every time you went on a business trip these past 3 years, you were with Tang Tian. His face went pale. You investigated me. I'm a lawyer, He Jingheng. I sneered. Investigation is my literal job, by the way. Tang Tian just took 500,000 from your assistant last month. She called it a psychological counseling fee. He Jingheng's pupils contracted. He clearly had no idea. And I pulled a document from my bag. These are the related party transaction records for He Group shipping over the past 3 years. Guess what I found? Siyuan. His voice dropped an octave. Don't do something you'll regret. Regret. I repeated the word, tasting the syllables. He Jingheng, do you know what I regret most? Is it meeting you at that negotiation table 3 years ago or agreeing to your proposal last month? Shenyang suddenly stepped forward, blocking the space between me and He Jingheng. Mister, he said, the patient needs rest. He Jingheng stared at him for a long time before suddenly laughing. It was a cold, hollow laugh that didn't reach his eyes, like a crack on a mask. Shenyang, he said, you think marrying her will help you turn the tables? Have you forgotten how your father died? Shenyang's body stiffened. An accident, He Jingheng whispered. Such a tragic accident. He set down the apple and the knife, adjusted his cuffs and paused as he passed me. Siyuan, he whispered in my ear. The game has begun. The door shut behind him. I let go of my father's hand, realizing my palm was drenched in sweat. Shenyang stood by the window, his back as rigid as a slab of iron. The accident he mentioned. I know. Shenyang turned around, his eyes bloodshot. My father didn't commit suicide. I met his gaze. Evidence. I'm looking for it, he said. He walked over and held out his hand. Gu Siyuan, a formal partnership. I shook his hand. A formal partnership. Outside the window, the setting sun stained the sky blood red. He Jingheng's Mercedes pulled out of the parking lot. I could just make out his silhouette on the phone through the window. He was setting the board, I knew that. But this time there were 2 players on the other side at 300 am. The monitor let out a piercing alarm. When I rushed into the ward, the doctors were performing CPR. My father's face was ash-white, looking like a piece of paper that had been crumpled and smoothed back out. Epinephrine. Prep the defibrillator. I backed against the wall, watching them work frantically on him. Shenyang stood at the door, still holding the coffees he'd just bought. He'd said the hospital vending machine coffee was terrible and went to a convenience store 3 blocks away. Family members, please step out. I was pushed into the hallway through the glass doors. My father's body jolted and fell with every shock. I counted once, twice, 3 times. My phone vibrated in my pocket. He Jingheng's name flashed on the screen. Siyuan, I heard your father isn't doing well. How do you know? I hold shares in that hospital. His voice was laced with a hint of amusement. Need me to arrange for the best doctors? Go to hell. Don't be angry, he said. I just wanted to remind you that your father has something I've always been interested in. If he passes, you'll inherit it, won't you? I gripped the phone tight. What is it? Ask him, He Jingheng said. Or I'll tell you at the funeral. He hung up. The long, flat tone of the monitor bled through the door, sounding like the wail of a dying animal. The doctor stepped out and pulled off his mask. I'm sorry, we did everything we could. I stood frozen. Shenyang steadied me by the shoulders. His hands were burning hot, his palms calloused. Let me in. My father lay there, no longer looking like himself. I took his hand. It was still warm but fading fast. Dad, I whispered. What does He Jingheng want? His eyelids fluttered and a gurgling sound came from his throat. I leaned down, pressing my ear to his lips. Safe, the safe. His voice was a mere thread. Code is your birthday. What's inside? Jingheng framed me. His hand suddenly tightened, his nails digging into my wrist. The shipyard contract, it's a fake. The line on the monitor went flat. I stayed leaned over until the nurse came to pull me away. Shenyang intercepted me in the hallway. What did he say? He Jingheng framed him. My voice was flat, like I was reading a case file. The shipyard merger contract was forged. Which shipyard? GU shipyard. I looked up at him. My father's life's work. I thought it was acquired by He Group Shipping 3 years ago because of poor management. But it was He Jinghung's setup all along. It was He Jinghung's setup. I walked toward the elevator, my steps steady. Shenyang followed. In the elevator he suddenly asked, "Why aren't you crying?" "Because tears are useless." I stared at our reflections in the elevator doors. I want his life. The funeral was set for 3 days later. During those 3 days, I handled my father's estate and found the contract in the safe. On the surface it looked like a standard merger agreement, but the supplemental terms in the appendix were something my father had never signed: a forged signature, commercial fraud, enough evidence to put He Jinghung behind bars. But I didn't call the police immediately. Why? Shenyang asked. We were in my apartment, documents sprawled across the table. Because it's not enough, I said. I want him ruined, penniless, and kneeling at my feet. You're crazy. Maybe. I looked at him. You can back out now. I'll have the divorce papers drawn up tomorrow. Shenyang looked at me for a long time. He reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His touch was gentle, as if handling something fragile. "Gu Siyuan," he said. "My father's death needs an answer too." We locked eyes, seeing the same thing in each other: hatred and something else, something more complex and unnameable. It rained on the day of the funeral. Dressed in a black suit, I stood at the entrance of the memorial hall to thank the guests. He Jinghung arrived in a dark suit with a white flower pinned to his lapel, looking as grief-stricken as if he'd lost his own father. "Siyuan, my deepest condolences." He took my hand. His palm was dry and warm. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I actually have something to show you." I pulled out the contract and waved it in front of him. He Jinghung's expression froze instantly. "What is this?" "The signature you forged 3 years ago." I smiled. "Want me to read it out loud for everyone?" His fingers tightened on mine, the pressure painful, but a second later he let go, the smile returning to his face. "Siyuan," he whispered, "you think this alone can take me down?" "No," I said, "but it'll keep you awake tonight." I turned to the next guest, hearing him say behind me, "The He Group Gala is tonight. Bring your new husband. I've prepared a surprise for you both." The gala was held at a hotel under the He Group, a rooftop ballroom overlooking the entire harbor. I wore a black gown, and Shenyang wore a new charcoal gray suit I'd bought him. With its sharp tailoring, he looked nothing like the destitute son of a fallen shipping mogul from 3 days ago. "Nervous?" he asked. "Excited," I replied. He Jinghung is about to make his move. As we entered the ballroom, the music dimmed, all eyes were on us, the abandoned bride and the bankrupt heir, the stars of this ongoing farce. He Jinghung stood in the center of the crowd with Tang Tian by his side. She was in a champagne-colored gown, a diamond necklace glittering under the lights. "Siyuan," He Jinghung raised his glass. "Thanks for coming. How could I miss your invitation?" I took a glass of champagne. "Miss Tang's necklace is lovely, a new arrival." Tang Tian instinctively touched her neck. Jinghung gave it to the heart of the deep from last year's auction. I interrupted. "Sold for 8.6 million, mister. He is certainly generous to his mistresses." Snickers broke out around us. Tang Tian's face flushed crimson. "Siyuan," He Jinghung's voice darkened. "Let the past be the past. I have some good news to announce tonight." He clapped his hands and the giant screen lit up. It was my father, lying in his hospital bed, intubated, speaking. "I voluntarily transfer all shares of GU Shipyard to He Group Shipping." I froze. My father's eyes were unfocused and his voice weak, but he was indeed pressing his thumbprint onto a voluntary transfer document. "This video was taken 3 days ago," He Jinghung said. "It was his dying wish. Siyuan, your father gave the shipyard back to me." The room erupted into whispers. I stared at the screen. My father's hand had been trembling, and someone was steadying him just off camera. That hand wore a Patek Philippe. It was He Jinghung's watch. "It's a forgery," I said. "That was coerced. There was a notary present." He Jinghung smiled. "It is perfectly valid legally." Shenyang stepped forward. "Mr. He, are you sure you want to discuss legalities right now? Does Mr. Shen have some insight? I'm just curious." Shenyang pulled his phone from his pocket. "This video uses the exact same tactics as the ones used to drive my father to his death 3 years ago." He pressed play. It was a video of Shen's father standing on a rooftop, with a silhouette moving behind him, though blurry. That profile and the reflection of a Patek Philippe watch face matched the hand in the previous video perfectly. He Jinghung's smile finally vanished completely. "Where did you get My father had a habit of keeping backups, Shenyang said. He recorded every negotiation, Mr. He want to hear how you persuaded him to jump. The ballroom fell into a deathly silence. He Jingheng's face shifted through a palette of emotions under the lights. I raised my glass and lightly clinked it against his. The game has begun, I said. Mr. He Jingheng reacted faster than I expected. The next morning my law license was suspended pending investigation. Someone had filed an anonymous report regarding a conflict of interest for concealing my marital status while representing a client. The report was anonymous, but the envelope bore the He Group shipping logo. Despicable. Shenyang slammed the newspaper on the table. He struck first. Standard procedure, I said, flipping through the investigation notice. But he missed one thing. What? I'm not a lawyer anymore, I smiled. Which means I can do things a lawyer isn't allowed to do. I dialed a number. A raspy voice answered. Attorney Gu. Mr. Wang, it's Gu Siyuan, I said. Do you remember that altered audit report from 3 years ago when He Group acquired your shipyard? Silence stretched on the other end of the line. What do you want to do? Let's collaborate, I said. I want He Jingheng dead and you want your shipyard back. Tomorrow at 3 in the afternoon, meet at the usual spot. I hung up and Shenyang looked at me. You still have a trump card. Over the last 3 years, He Jingheng has swallowed up 17 shipyards. I replied, not everyone is as easy to bully as he thinks. Over the next 2 weeks, I met with 9 of his victims. Some had been forced into acquisitions, some were victims of commercial fraud, and others, like Shen's father, had died in accidents. I compiled their testimonies into a thick binder. It looked like a death note. This isn't enough for court, Shenyang noted. Most of it is past the statute of limitations. We're not going to court, I said. We're going to the shareholders' meeting. The annual shareholders' meeting for his shipping was set for the end of the month. As a representative of the creditors, Shenyang was eligible to attend, and as Mrs. He, even if it only lasted less than 3 hours, I had received an invitation as well. The invitation was gold-leafed, embossed with the anchor logo of his shipping. I placed it on the table side by side with my father's funeral portrait. Dad, I whispered, just watch. On the day of the meeting I wore a white suit, the color of funerals, and the color of brides. Shenyang wore a black suit. It was as if we had swapped identities. He was the widow and I was the groom. The conference room of the He Group was on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the busy port. Cranes moved in the distance like giant steel beasts. He Jingheng sat at the end of the long table, flanked by 6 directors. Tang Tian wasn't there. I heard she had been sent to Switzerland for recuperation. Mr. Shen, Miss Gu. He Jingheng nodded. Welcome, Mrs. He. I corrected him. Even though it only lasted 3 hours, legally that relationship did exist. The corner of his mouth twitched. Please take a seat. When the meeting reached the creditors' report phase, Shenyang stood up. He was exceptionally silent today, like a blade tucked inside its sheath. According to article of the bankruptcy law, sorry to interrupt, He Jingheng said, but before Mr. Shen gives his report, I'd like to handle a procedural matter first. He clapped his hands and the doors to the conference room opened. 2 men in uniforms walked in, officers from the Economic Crime Investigation Squad. He Jingheng announced, they have some questions for Mr. Shen. An officer flashed his ID. Shenyang, you are suspected of forging commercial documents and malicious acquisition. Please come with us. I stood up. What documents? A merger agreement for his shipping from 3 years ago. The officer said, someone reported that Mr. Shen forged a signature in an attempt to commit extortion. I looked at He Jingheng. He was smiling. That victory is mine kind of smile. Siyuan, he said, did you think you were the only one who could find witnesses? Tang Tian is safe in Switzerland, but she left behind some interesting things, like photos of your secret meetings with Mr. Shen before the wedding. It looks a lot like premeditation. He interrupted. Premeditated forgery, premeditated commercial fraud. Mr. Shen might be staying with us for a while. As for you, He Jingheng, I said, you sure you want to arrest him now? The evidence is conclusive. Then what about these? I pulled a stack of files from my bag and slammed them onto the table. Testimonies from 17 shipyards, investigation reports on 3 accidental deaths, and the video of you driving my father to his death. The room fell deathly silent. You're insane. He Jingheng's voice cracked for the first time. These things, I said, tapping my phone as the conference room projector lit up. have already been sent to the private emails of every director in this room, as well as to 3 financial news outlets. The video began to play on the screen. My father stood on the rooftop, and Jingheng's voice came from off-camera. Jump, or I'll make sure your son dies with you. The directors' faces paled. One white-haired old man stood up. President, it's a forgery. Jingheng slammed his hand on the table and stood up. All of this is forged. Then explain this. I pulled up another video, the voluntary transfer of the GU shipyard 3 years ago. Why were my father's hands shaking so much? And why was there a hand wearing a Patek Philippe supporting him just out of frame? Jingheng's face turned livid. He looked at me, his gaze like a poison-dipped blade. Gu Siyuan, he hissed. You're going to regret this. I've already regretted things, I replied. I regret meeting you. Now it's your turn to regret. The officers from the Economic Crime Squad stood there unsure of what to do. I turned to them. Officers, I suggest you also check the accounts of his shipping. Over the past 3 years, 17 large sums of money have flowed into overseas shell companies. The recipient's surname is He. Jingheng's pupils contracted. That was his private account. He thought he had hidden it perfectly. How did you? I'm a corporate undertaker, Jingheng, I said, leaning over and bracing my hands on the table. I specialize in cleaning up messes like yours. I've spent 3 weeks auditing your books. Every single transaction is crystal clear. The doors opened again. This time it was people from the Securities Regulatory Commission. Mr. Jingheng, the leader said, you are suspected of insider trading and financial fraud. Please cooperate with our investigation. The scene became chaotic. As Jingheng was being led away, he passed by me and suddenly whispered, you think you won, Siyuan. The real game is just beginning. His look sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't anger, it wasn't fear, it was a kind of anticipation, like a hunter watching his prey walk into a trap. Shenyang was released, but warned not to leave the city. As we walked out of the He Group building, the setting sun hit the harbor, dyeing the cranes gold. You had this planned all along? He asked. Since the day of the wedding, I said. But Jingheng was right, this is only the beginning. What do you mean? He still has a hole card, I said, looking out at the distant horizon. I don't know what it is, but the look in his eyes just now. Shenyang took my hand. His palm was burning hot, a stark contrast to my cold body. Whatever cards he has, he said, we'll play them together. I turned to look at him. This man I'd known for less than a month shared my hatred and my wounds. We were like 2 ships meeting in a storm, forced into an alliance only to realize we were heading in the same direction. Shenyang, I said, if I end up becoming just like him. You won't, he interrupted, because you hate him not for the money but for your father. Then what are you doing it for? He was silent for a long time, so long I thought he wouldn't answer. For my father, he finally said, and for myself, Gu Siyuan, I don't want to be a loser anymore. We stood in the shadow of the He Group building, watching Jingheng being pushed into a police car. Flashbulbs went off everywhere. This would be on every financial headline tomorrow, but I knew he wouldn't go down that easily. The real war had only just begun. Jingheng was out on bail. The $20 million bond was pocket change to him. The first thing he did upon release was hold a press conference, claiming he was a victim of a commercial frame-up and that all the evidence was maliciously forged by a competitor. He called you out by name, Xiao Lin said, handing me a tablet. A certain lawyer surnamed Gu, acting out of a personal vendetta to maliciously slander me. Let him talk, I said, flipping through files. The harder he rants, the harder he'll fall. Also, Xiao Lin hesitated. Tang Tian is back. My fingers paused. When, this morning, she was photographed at the airport, she went straight to the He Group building and stayed for 3 hours. I set the files down and looked out the window. Shenyang was waiting for me in the car downstairs. We were going to see Lawyer Yu, my father's old friend and the only one who knew the truth about the shipyard. Get the car ready. Lawyer Yu's office was in the old district, an old villa covered in ivy. He was in his 70s, but his eyes were as sharp as a hawk's. Siyuan, I am so sorry about what happened to your father. Uncle Yu, I said, getting straight to the point. You handled that merger agreement 3 years ago. Tell me the truth. The old man was silent for a long while before pulling a manila envelope from a safe. Your father knew back then that Jingheng was deceiving him, he said, but he signed it because Jingheng used you to threaten him. Used me, he said. If your father didn't sign, he would make it impossible for you to survive in the legal world. Your father, Lawyer Yu sighed, he loved you too much. Inside the envelope was a letter in my father's handwriting, crooked and shaky, likely written after his stroke. Yuan, your dad is useless. I couldn't save the shipyard, but at least I saved you. Jingheng is not a good man. Stay away from him. The things in the safe are enough to put him in prison, but don't be impulsive. Use them only when you are strong enough. Daddy loves you. I gripped the paper until my knuckles turned white. And this, lawyer, you produced a USB drive. Your father recorded this secretly, what Jingheng said in his office. I plugged it into my laptop. The screen showed Jingheng 3 years younger and full of himself. Old man Gu is nothing but a stepping stone, he said to the camera, unaware he was being recorded. Once I have the shipyard, that girl won't be able to run away either. Feelings, what a joke. What I want are the client resources she has in her hands. What about Tang Tian? Tang Tian is my true love, Jingheng laughed. But true love doesn't put food on the table. Once I marry Jiu Siyuan and get my hands on her father's old connections, I'll find a way to divorce her. Asset division. The prenuptial agreement is crystal clear. She won't get a single cent. The video ended. I sat there, cold to the bone. It wasn't anger, it was a strange, hollow feeling, like standing on the edge of a cliff and finally seeing the abyss below. Siyuan, Shenyang took my hand. I'm fine, I said, my voice steady. I've just confirmed one thing. What? Jingheng never loved me, I said, turning to him. That's good. That way when I destroy him my heart won't soften. We got back into the car and I immediately dialed a number. President Wang, move the plan up tomorrow. I want to see his shipping stock price hit the floor. Miss Gu, you owe me a favor, I said. It's time to pay up. I hung up and looked at Shenyang. Are you scared? Scared of what? What happens next? I said. It might get very dirty. He smiled, the scar at the corner of his eye flickering in the light. Jiu Siyuan, after my father died, I slept under bridges, ate spoiled food, and had my ribs broken by debt collectors. Do you think there's anything left that can scare me? We looked at each other, seeing the same fire in each other's eyes. The next day, his shipping stock price plummeted. It started with an anonymous article that detailed the last 5 years of his financial fraud, insider trading, and the suspicious points of 3-inch accidental deaths. Within 2 hours of the post, 3 agencies downgraded his rating and 5 funds announced they were divesting. Jingheng's call came in the afternoon. Siyuan, let's meet and talk. There's nothing to talk about, it's about your father, he said. There are some things you haven't figured out yet. I gripped my phone. What do you mean? Let's talk in person. He gave an address. Come alone, don't bring your new husband. It was a private club hidden halfway up a mountain, members only, very private. I went to the appointment alone, but I had Shenyang wait in the car at the foot of the mountain, sending him my location every 10 minutes. Jingheng sat on the terrace with red wine in front of him. He looked a bit thinner, but his spirits were high, like a leopard ready to pounce. Sit. I remained standing. Speak. Still as stubborn as ever. He sighed. Siyuan, did we really have to come to this? You're the one who walked away first, I said. That step you took at the wedding, that was a mistake. He stood up. Tang Tian, she's pregnant. He froze. I looked into it. I said, 3 months along. You found out a week before the wedding. You didn't chase after her because she was crying. You chased after her because she was holding a pregnancy test. Silence. The mountain breeze swept past, carrying the saltiness of the distant sea. You know everything, Jingheng said. Then why did you still marry me? Because I wanted you. Ruined, I replied. And a wedding is the best stage for that. He suddenly laughed, the sound echoing across the terrace. Good, he said, as expected of the woman I chose. Let's talk business. What else about my father don't I know? Jingheng stopped laughing and pulled a photo from his pocket. It showed a young woman holding an infant, standing in front of a ship. Recognize her? I stared at the face. There was a strange sense of familiarity. Your mother, Jingheng said, a photo from 25 years ago. That baby in her arms, that's not you. What nonsense are you talking about? You're adopted, Jiu Siyuan, he said. Your father didn't tell you. Your biological parents were rivals of the Jiu shipyard back then. They died in an accidental shipwreck. Your father adopted you out of guilt because he was the one who tampered with that ship. The photo slipped from my hand. I took a step back, gripping the railing for support. Don't believe me? Jingheng pulled out another document, the adoption papers and the investigation report from the shipwreck. Your father paid a fortune to keep people quiet, but walls have ears. What do you want? My voice was trembling. Cooperation, he said, stepping closer. You stop attacking the He group. And I'll destroy these Siyuan. We could have been a power couple. You have the ambition, I have the means, why slaughter each other? I looked at him. That face which had once made my heart flutter now looked like an exquisite mask. He Jingheng, I said, even if I am adopted, even if my father made mistakes, what does that have to do with me destroying you? He stunned. You're right, I might have dirty blood, I said, picking up the photo and tearing it into pieces. But that only makes me stronger. I don't need a clean family history. I just need you dead. I turned toward the door as he shouted behind me, you'll regret this, Gu Siyuan. You think Shenyang is some kind of saint. He only approached you for revenge. I stopped in my tracks. I know, I said, but our goals are aligned for now. He Jingheng, that's why you failed. You treat everyone like pawns, never realizing that pawns can join forces. Exiting the club, the mountain wind chilled my face. Shenyang's car was parked by the roadside. He was leaning against the door with a cigarette, the first time I'd seen him smoke. How did it go? He knows I'm adopted, I said. He tried to use it to blackmail me. Shenyang's movement stiffened. I'm fine, I said, getting into the car. Drive, we're going somewhere. Where? The orphanage, I said. I need to confirm something. The car started. In the rearview mirror, he Jingheng stood at the club entrance, his figure growing smaller until it vanished into the mountain road. I knew he was setting a trap, and I knew this card was just the beginning. But it didn't matter. I felt the USB drive in my pocket. It contained a video of He Jingheng admitting to all his crimes, which I had secretly recorded on the terrace. He thought he was hunting me, unaware that the hunter had already fallen into the snare. In the orphanage's archive room, dust motes danced in the shafts of light. The administrator was a kind old lady. She adjusted her reading glasses and searched through a yellowed registry. Gu Siyuan, entered in 1996. Adopted in 1998, found it, adopter, Gu Zhongwo, occupation, shipyard owner. Can you find my biological parents? The old lady hesitated. I'd need a court order. I pulled out my lawyer's ID, though suspended, it hadn't been revoked yet. The lady glanced at it, sighed, and took another folder from a safe. Actually, your father left a message back then, she said. He said if you ever came to look, I should give this to you. Inside the envelope was a note in my father's handwriting. Yuan, no matter what He Jingheng says, remember that you are our daughter. We adopted you out of love, not guilt. Your biological parents were heroes. They saved everyone on that ship, including me. He Jingheng twisted the truth. Don't believe him. There was also a photo taken from a different angle than the one He Jingheng had shown me. On the back it was written, group photo of shipwreck survivors 1996. I counted 12 people standing on a lifeboat. In the middle, a young woman held an infant, and beside her stood a man in a captain's uniform. This is the shipwreck, the old lady said. The cargo ship caught fire. Your biological parents were crew members. They gave up their spots on the lifeboat for the passengers, and she didn't finish. I stared at the photo. The infant was sleeping soundly in the woman's arms, blissfully unaware she was about to become an orphan. Why did He Jingheng say my father tampered with the ship? Because the fire was caused by improper maintenance at the shipyard, the lady explained. Your father was in charge of that ship's inspection, but it wasn't intentional. Someone had cut corners on materials, and your father later sent that person to prison. I closed my eyes. He Jingheng, you always know how to weaponize the truth by distorting it. Thank you. Stepping out of the orphanage, the sunlight was blinding. Shenyang was leaning against the car door, looking grim as he spoke on the phone. Did something happen? Tang Tian, he said, hanging up. She posted a long statement on social media. She claims you interfered in her relationship with He Jingheng and forged evidence to frame the He group. What? He handed me his phone. Tang Tian's account, with 100,000 followers, had a long post accompanied by 9 photos, intimate pictures of her and He Jingheng spanning 3 years. The earliest one predated when He Jingheng and I met. She says you were the one stalking him, and He Jingheng only dealt with you for the sake of family interests, Shenyang said. She claims that on the wedding day you tried to force him into marriage, which is why he ran out to comfort her. The comment section was exploding. Die, mistress. Support President He. Get Gu Siyuan out of the legal profession. I stared at the screen and suddenly laughed. This is a kamikaze mission, I said. Tang Tian isn't a fool. She wouldn't jump out to take the fall for no reason. You mean He Jingheng forced her, I said. He's using the baby to blackmail her. Once this post goes live, Tang Tian's life is over. But He Jingheng can stage a comeback. I dialed Tang Tian's number. It rang for a long time before she picked up. Gu Siyuan. Her voice was trembling. What do you want? A meeting, I said. I know you're being forced. He Jingheng is using the child to threaten you, right? Silence on the other end, followed by suppressed sobbing. His listening, Tang Tian choked out. I can't say anything, then listen. To me, I said quickly, you have leverage over him. I know you do. That overseas transfer 3 years ago, you were the recipient. Tang Tian, collaborate with me. I'll ensure you and the baby are safe. How do you know about that? I'm a lawyer, I said. Auditing is my specialty. Tomorrow afternoon, the old pier. Come alone. I hung up and Shenyang looked at me. Are you sure she'll show? She will, I said. A mother will do anything for her child. The next day at the old pier, Tang Tian wore sunglasses and a mask, but they couldn't hide her swollen eyes. She had grown thin on the wedding day. She was an exquisite beauty now. She looked like a withered flower. What do you want? She asked, her voice hoarse. Collaboration, I said, pushing a coffee toward her. Tell me all of He Jingheng's secrets. I'll help you leave him, go abroad, and start over. He won't let me go. He can barely save himself, I said. The Securities Commission is already investigating his overseas accounts. That transfer is ironclad evidence. Tang Tian, you have 2 choices, be a witness or be an accomplice. She took off her sunglasses, revealing red, puffy eyes. Do you hate me about the wedding day? I did, I said. But now I know you're a victim too. A man like He Jingheng drags whoever he loves into hell with him. Tang Tian's tears fell. She pulled a hard drive from her bag. This has all his books and recordings of him with several officials. I've kept them for protection. I took the drive. It was light, yet it felt like I was holding a bomb. Why give this to me? I asked. You could use this to blackmail him for money. For status, because I'm tired, Tang Tian said. For 3 years, I've watched him destroy one rival after another. I knew I was next. Gucun, I'm not a good person. But I want to live. I want my child to live. She stood up, then paused. By the way, there's something you should know. He Jingheng has recently been in contact with Shenyang's uncle, the second Shen brother. That fire at your father's shipyard, Shen's uncle was the one who set it. He Jingheng has the evidence. My pupils contracted. Does Shenyang know? He probably doesn't, Tang Tian said, but if He Jingheng leaks this, Shenyang will kill him or kill his uncle. Tang Tian said, either way it would be the end of you too. This is He Jingheng's backup plan. If your alliance gets too tight, he'll use this to tear you apart. She put her sunglasses back on and vanished into the crowd. I sat there, gripping the hard drive until my knuckles turned white. Shenyang's uncle, the fire, the truth behind the adoption. He Jingheng, your web is even larger than I imagined, but it didn't matter. I felt the recording pen in my pocket. I had recorded the entire conversation. Tang Tian's testimony, plus the evidence on the drive, was enough to put He Jingheng away for the rest of his life. The question was, should I tell Shenyang? The car was parked by the curb. He was in the driver's seat, looking over some documents. The sunlight filtered through the window, casting dappled shadows across his face. Did you get it? He asked. I got it, I said, getting into the car. And something else. What? I looked at him, this man who had fought side by side with me. He had a scar by his eye, callus on his palms, and he always curled up when he slept like a wounded animal. If I told him, he might go and kill his uncle or lose himself if I didn't. He Jingheng would reveal it at the most critical moment to break us apart. Gucun. He frowned. What's wrong? Nothing, I said. Let's go back. We have a lot of work to do. The car started and I looked out the window. He Jingheng was waiting somewhere, waiting to watch us tear each other apart. But he forgot that the most dangerous weapon is the person who knows the truth but chooses silence. The emergency shareholders meeting for his shipping was set for Friday afternoon. This was He Jingheng's counterattack. He intended to whitewash his image in front of the shareholders while impeaching me as a malicious creditor. When the invitation arrived on my desk, I was reviewing the files from Tang Tian's drive. You can't go, Shenyang said. It's a trap. I have to go. I said, pointing to a document on the screen. Look at this. The actual controller of his shipping isn't He Jingheng. What? It's his mother, old Mrs. He. I said. She holds 51%. But she's been bedridden for years and never interferes if I can convince her. How are you going to convince a bedridden old woman? I closed the laptop. I have my ways. The He family estate was in the suburbs, a traditional Chinese courtyard with rockeries and flowing water. Old Mrs. He lived in the east wing. Outside her window was a bamboo forest. When the wind blew, it rustled softly. Miss Gu, the old lady said, leaning against her couch, her hair as white as snow. I've heard of you, Madam He. I bowed. I'm here to tell you that your son is destroying the He group. She smiled, the wrinkles at the corners of her eyes fanning out. Jingheng is my son. I know him, he has ambition, yes, but under his leadership the market value of the He Group has quintupled through fraud, bribery and murder, I said, placing the files in front of her. These are the 7 lawsuits and 3-inch accidental deaths the He Group has been involved in over the past 3 years. Madam your son isn't an entrepreneur, he's a criminal. The old lady picked up the files and flipped through them slowly. Her fingers were withered, but her movements were steady. She didn't look like a sick person. What do you want? She asked, not looking up at the shareholders' meeting. I want you to cast a dissenting vote and remove He Jinghung from his position as CEO, and then the He Group undergoes bankruptcy reorganization, I said. I will take over to protect the He family's shares, but He Jinghung must be out. The old lady put down the files and looked at me. Those eyes were very similar to He Jinghung's, but deeper, like an ancient well. Miss Gu, do you know why I don't interfere in business anymore? Because 20 years ago I already knew what kind of man my son was, she said. He killed his father, my husband, just to inherit the family business early. I have the evidence, but I never called the police. I froze in place. Why? Because the He Group needed him, the old lady said. My husband was too weak, he couldn't hold on to this empire. Jinghung has the means and the ambition, he's filthy but he's useful. But now he has provoked someone he shouldn't have, she interrupted me. Gu Siyuan, the corporate undertaker, I've looked into the cases you've handled, 17 companies, all bankrupt. The people in charge ended up either in prison or dead by suicide. They got what they deserved. Jinghung will too, she said. But I have one condition. Name it. Spare his life, she said. Send him abroad and make sure he never returns. In exchange, I will support you at the shareholders' meeting. And she pulled a USB drive from under her pillow. This is the evidence of his parricide. I've hidden it for 20 years. I took the drive, its metal casing still held the warmth of her body. Why give this to me? Because I'm tired. The old lady lay back and closed her eyes. Before I die, I want to do one thing right. Stepping out of the He estate, the sunlight was piercing. Shenyang was waiting at the gate, a cigarette in his hand. He's been smoking more and more lately. How was it? I got it, I said, holding up the USB drive, and an unexpected bonus. What? Evidence that He Jinghung killed his father, I said. His mother gave it to me. Shenyang's movements stiffened. His mother? It happened 20 years ago, I said. He Jinghung killed his father to take over the business. Shenyang, we're not facing a human being, we're facing a monster. He was silent for a long time, so long that I thought he wouldn't speak. Gu Siyuan, he finally said. If we discover that we have to become monsters to defeat a monster, then we'll become monsters, I replied. But only on the battlefield. Once the war is over, we'll go back to being human. He looked at me with a complex gaze. Finally, he reached out and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. Fine, he said. When the war is over, we'll be human again. On the day of the shareholders' meeting, the He Group building was under heavy security. I wore my white suit, and Shenyang wore his black one. We looked like the black and white guards of death, coming to claim He Jinghung's soul. The conference room was packed with shareholders. The atmosphere was as heavy as the sea before a hurricane. He Jinghung sat in the head seat, dressed in a sharp suit, wearing a perfect smile. He didn't look at all like a man about to be ousted. Instead, he looked like he was waiting for good news. Everyone, he tapped the microphone. There are 2 items on today's agenda. First, our response to the recent malicious acquisition attempt. Second, the disqualification of certain creditor representatives. He looked at me, his eyes full of provocation. Before we officially begin, I'd like everyone to see a video. The screen lit up. It was a video of Shenyang and me in a hotel room. It was the first night after the wedding. We had slept in separate rooms, but the video had been edited to make it look like we were sharing a bed and acting intimately. This was the wedding night of Miss Gu Siyuan and Mr. Shenyang, He Jinghung announced. Interestingly, on that same night Mr. Shen's uncle Shen Mingde was involved in a warehouse fire at the docks, and Miss Gu's father Mr. Jiu Zhongwo experienced a very similar fire 20 years ago. The room erupted into an uproar. I looked at Shenyang, his face had turned deathly pale in an instant. What's even more interesting, He Jinghung continued, is that Mr. Shen Mingde has just surrendered to the police. He confessed that he set the fire at the Jiu shipyard 20 years ago and the person who ordered it was, he paused, Mr. Jiu Zhongwo. I stood up. That's a frame-up. The police will investigate whether it's a frame-up or not. He Jinghung smiled. But the shareholders have a right to know that your creditor representative might be linked to arson and her father might be a murderer. Shen Yang bolted upright, his chair crashing to the floor. You, Mr. Shen. He Jingheng said, your uncle is waiting for you at the police station. By the way, do you know how your father really died? It wasn't suicide, your uncle pushed him. Because he found out the truth. He found out your uncle conspired with Jiyu Zhongwo to kill 12 people. Shen Yang's body was shaking. I reached out to pull him back but he shoved my hand away. Is it true? He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. Your father? I didn't know, I said. Shen Yang, I swear I didn't know, but you looked into it, he said. The orphanage archives, you investigated that fire, you knew your father was connected to the shipyard, but you never told me. I froze. Yes, I had looked into it but I had chosen silence. Shen Yang, I said, I can explain. No need. He turned toward the door. Jiyu Siyuan, we're finished. The door slammed shut behind him. The conference room was silent. Everyone was staring at me as if watching a farce. He Jingheng stood up, walked to my side and lowered his voice. Siyuan, I told you that you'd regret this. I looked up at him. His smile was so perfect, so triumphant, as if he had already won the world. But he forgot that I still had one last card. Madam, I turned toward the corner. Do you have anything to say, old Mrs.? He was wheeled out by her nurse. Her appearance made He Jingheng's face fall. Mother, why are you? I'm here to make an announcement. The old lady's voice was soft, yet the room went silent. Starting today, I am revoking Jingheng's proxy rights. Miss Jiyu Siyuan will represent me fully in exercising all shareholder rights. Furthermore, she looked at her son with a sorrowful gaze. This is the evidence of you killing your father 20 years ago. I have already turned it over to the police. He Jingheng's expression finally shattered. Mother, you're insane. I'm your son. That's why I'm saving you. The old lady said, go to prison, Jingheng, at least stay alive. When the police entered the conference room, He Jingheng was still laughing, a desperate, crazed laugh like a trapped beast. Jiyu Siyuan. He looked back at me as he was being led away. You think you've won. Shen Yang will never forgive you. You're done. And as for me, I'll get out, and when you do, I said, I'll be waiting for you from a higher place. The doors closed and the room broke into applause, but I stood there, feeling no joy in victory. Shen Yang was gone. The rift between us was deeper than I had imagined. He Jingheng was right about one thing. In this game there were no winners. Shen Yang vanished. His phone was off, his apartment was empty, and he was nowhere to be found in his usual haunts. I sent people to look for him, but it was like searching for a needle in a haystack. Maybe he went abroad, Xiao Lin suggested. Or what? Or he just doesn't want to be found by you. I sat in my office, watching the city lights outside. 3 days ago, He Jingheng was officially arrested. Trading for his shipping was suspended for restructuring, and I had become the largest creditor. The media called me the Queen of Shipping, saying I was the year's biggest winner, but they didn't know that my battlefield was empty. Tang Tian called me from the airport to say thank you. She and the baby were going to New Zealand for a fresh start. I wished her luck and hung up, realizing how terrifyingly quiet the office was. Miss Ji-Yu. Xiao Lin poked her head in. An old gentleman is here to see you. He says his name is Shen. My heart skipped a beat. Let him in. It wasn't Shen Yang, it was a man in his 70s wearing an old-fashioned Maro suit and leaning on a cane. He had the same eyes as Shen Yang, but his aura was much darker. Shen Mingda. I stood up. Miss Ji-Yu. He sat down and poured himself a cup of tea. I'm here to tell you that He Jingheng lied to you. What? That fire 20 years ago, neither I nor your father set it, he said. It was He Jingheng's father, the old master. He caused that shipwreck to swallow up his competitors. Your father found out the truth and wanted to call the police, but master he threatened him, forcing him to adopt you. I froze. What proof do you have? This. He pulled a tape recorder from his pocket. Old master, his deathbed confession. I've kept the recording for 20 years. A raspy, gasping voice came from the recorder. Mingda, I'm sorry to you, to the Jiyu family, and to those 12 lives. I set that fire to seize their roots. Jiyu Zhongwo found out, and I threatened him. If he ever told a soul, I'd kill his daughter. The recording ended. I sat there, chilled to the bone. Why give this to me now? Because I'm dying, Shen Mingda said. Stage 4 lung cancer. I don't want to take this secret to my grave. Where is Shen Yang? That boy. The old man sighed. He went to find He Jingheng. He's carrying a gun. I bolted upright. When? This afternoon, Shen Mingda said. He said he's going to avenge your father and his own. Miss Gu, go stop him. He Jingheng isn't worth throwing both your lives away. I grabbed my coat and rushed out, calling Shenyang's number frantically, but it remained off. He couldn't get into the detention center. He Jingheng was in solitary bail. No, that was impossible. Then I slammed on the brakes. The He estate, old Mrs. She had the power to let Shenyang see He Jingheng as a condition for settlement. The car practically flew. When I arrived at the He estate, it was dark. The lights in the east wing were on, showing two silhouettes against the window. I kicked the door open. Shenyang was standing in the middle of the room holding a gun pointed at a kneeling He Jingheng. He Jingheng's forehead was bleeding, but he was still laughing. "Siyuan, you're here," he said. "Your new husband is trying to kill me. Aren't you going to stop him?" "Shenyang." I walked closer slowly. "Put the gun down. He killed 12 people. Shenyang's voice was flat, like he was announcing the weather. "Including your parents and my father, Jiu Siyuan. How can I let this go? Because it's not worth it," I said. "If you kill him, you go to prison. He'll be dead and at peace. But what about us? What about those of us who have to keep living?" "Us?" Shenyang turned to look at me, tears shimmering in his eyes. "Is there still an us between us? You lied to me. You knew all along that your father was involved in that fire." "I didn't know," I interrupted. "I only found out the truth today." "Shenyang, if I wanted to lie to you, why would I have married you? Why would I have teamed up with you? It would have been much easier just to work with He Jingheng." He stunned. "Because I hate him," I said. "From the day of the wedding, all I've wanted was for him to die, but I want you to live even more." "Shenyang, this past month I couldn't go on." Shenyang looked at me and his gun slowly lowered. "Jiu Siyuan," he said. "You're a liar." "I am," I replied. "But I never lied about my heart." Suddenly He Jingheng lunged at Shenyang. They wrestled together. The gun went off and a bullet whistled past my ear, embedding itself in the wall. I lunged forward, grabbing the barrel. My finger caught in the trigger guard. He Jingheng was incredibly strong. He gripped my throat and pinned me to the floor. "Siyuan," he gasped. "I told you that you'd regret this." A shot rang out. Warm liquid splashed onto my face. I opened my eyes. He Jingheng's body went limp and slumped onto me. Shenyang stood nearby, the barrel of his gun still smoking. "Shenyang." "It wasn't me," he said, his voice trembling. "Old Mrs." He was sitting in her wheelchair, holding another gun. Her face was expressionless, like a stone statue. "I gave him life," she said, "and I shall end it." "Jingheng, don't blame mother." He Jingheng lay on the floor, his eyes still open, staring at the ceiling. His lips moved slightly as if he wanted to say something. But in the end, he only let out a sigh. It sounded like relief, yet also like regret. I crawled up, covered in blood that wasn't mine. Shenyang held me tightly, as if trying to press me into his very bones. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have doubted you." "It's okay," I said. "We all have secrets, we all have wounds. What matters is that we're still alive." When the police arrived, old Mrs. He surrendered her weapon. She looked at her son's body and said softly, "I should have done this 20 years ago, then he wouldn't have hurt so many people." Walking out of the He estate, the night breeze swept away the scent of blood from my face. Shenyang took my hand, our fingers interlocking. "Where to now?" he asked. "Home," I said. "And then we rebuild his shipping, not for the He family but for the victims, for my father and for yours. Together." The car started, and in the rearview mirror the lights of the He estate grew distant until they finally vanished into the night. He Jingheng was dead, but the story was far from over. There was still the restructuring of his shipping, the public disclosure of the truth, and the compensation for the victims' families. But it didn't matter. I turned to look at Shenyang. He was focused on driving, his profile flickering under the glow of the streetlights. We had a lifetime ahead of us. He Jingheng's death made the front page headlines. Shipping tycoon dies suddenly in prison. Head of He Group dies under mysterious circumstances. Gilded family vendetta comes to an end. Titles like these were everywhere. The police ruled it as accidental injury by a family member, and given her age and health, old Mrs. He was granted medical parole to serve her sentence outside of prison. But something felt off to me. "The autopsy report," I said, slamming the file onto the desk. "He Jingheng had chronic poison in his system, ingested over at least a month. That means he was being poisoned even before he entered prison." Shenyang frowned. "Who did it?" "Only those close to him could have," I counted. "His mother, his lawyer, and—" I paused. "Tang Tian. Didn't Tang Tian go to New Zealand?" "She did, but she came back last week," I said, pulling up the airport records. and she visited the detention center. When we found Tang Tian, she was living in a suburban apartment, cradling an infant. She had grown very thin, her eyes sunken, like a flower that had completely withered away. "You're here," she said, later than I expected. "Was it you who poisoned him?" I asked. "Yes," she admitted without hesitation. "Chronic poison, a little bit every day, mixed into the tea he drank. It started before the wedding. He thought it was just a health tonic." "Why?" Tang Tian laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Because he wanted to kill my baby the day I found out I was pregnant. He said he wouldn't keep this child, that he would take care of it. I knew his methods, so I struck first." She looked down at the infant, her gaze softening. "I killed him to protect my child, Jiu Siyuan. Can you understand that?" I looked at her, at this woman I had once viewed as a rival. Both of us had been partially destroyed by He Jingheng, but she had suffered more. She had actually loved that monster and carried his child. "I understand," I said, "but you shouldn't have carried this burden alone. I don't need your sympathy," Tang Tian said. "I only need you to promise me one thing." "What is it?" "Never tell the child who his father was," she said. "Let him believe his father was an ordinary man who died in an ordinary accident. This is the final protection I can give him." Shenyang and I looked at each other and nodded simultaneously. As we left the apartment, a light rain began to fall. Shenyang held up an umbrella and I leaned against his shoulder, suddenly feeling an overwhelming wave of exhaustion. "Is it over?" he asked. "No," I said. "The restructuring of his shipping isn't finished. There's one last step." "What?" "He Jingheng's private account," I said. "He has a massive sum of money overseas, enough to buy 3 He groups. If we find it, we'll have total control over the situation." "Where is it?" "International waters," I said. "A cargo ship called the Ghost. It was his private vault." 3 days later, we chartered a speedboat and headed for the coordinates in international waters. Shenyang piloted the boat while I sat beside him, watching the red dot on the GPS grow closer. "There's a large ship," Shenyang said. 10 o'clock position. The Ghost was larger than I had imagined, rusted and weathered like a sleeping whale. We pulled alongside and climbed the rope ladder onto the deck. It was deserted, too quiet. Shenyang whispered, his hand resting on the gun at his back. We descended into the cargo hold, which was packed with shipping containers. I found the one numbered HXH001 and entered He Jingheng's birthday. Access denied. Try Tang Tian's birthday, Shenyang suggested. Still denied. I stared at the keypad and suddenly remembered old Mrs. His words. The night Jingheng killed his father was the old master his 62nd birthday celebration. I entered the date of master his death. The lock clicked open. Inside the container wasn't cash, but files. Thick stacks of documents recording every dirty transaction his shipping had conducted over the last 30 years. Bribery, money laundering, murder, and, "What's this?" Shenyang pulled out a specific folder. I took it, and the moment I glanced at it, my blood turned to ice. "The GU Shipyard merger case," I said, my voice trembling. "The mastermind wasn't He Jingheng, it was..." "Who?" "My father," I said. "Jiu Zhongwo. He was the one who proposed the acquisition, forged the documents and voluntarily sold the shipyard to the He family. The file slipped from my hands 20 years ago during that shipwreck. My father was an accomplice. 3 years ago when the shipyard went bankrupt, my father was the mastermind. His illness, his vulnerability, even his death, it was all a charade to make me hate He Jingheng. He wanted me to avenge him by eliminating everyone who knew the truth." Jiu Siyuan. Shenyang gripped my hand. "He played me," I said. "From start to finish. The adoption was real. The fire was real, but he was a collaborator, not a victim. He used me just like He Jingheng used Tang Tian." Suddenly an alarm blared and red lights began to flash frantically in the hold. Shenyang pulled me toward the deck. "But the hatch was already locked tight." "It's a trap," he said. "This is a snare." A chemical gas began to seep from the seams of the containers. It was acrid, making our eyes sting and tear up. I covered my mouth and nose and saw a monitor flicker to life in the corner. A face appeared. It wasn't He Jingheng, it was my father. Yuan, the man in the video said. "If you're seeing this, it means He Jingheng is dead and you are nearing your end as well. I'm sorry Daddy used you, but the He family had to fall for those 12 lives and for the debt I owe. Forgive me or hate me, but please live. The password is your true birthday, August 15, 1996. There is a lifeboat inside the container." The screen went black as the gas grew thicker. I lunged at the keypad and entered 19960815. The floor of the container slid open, revealing a lifeboat below. "Get in," Shenyang pushed me down and jumped in after me. We started the engine and roared out just before the container sealed completely. A muffled explosion echoed behind us as the Ghost began to sink. We drifted on the sea, watching the ship tilt and eventually vanish into the black waves. Is he still alive? Shenyang asked. I don't know, I said. Maybe the video was pre-recorded, or maybe he's out there somewhere watching me. I gazed out at the infinite horizon and suddenly laughed. The sound echoed over the empty water. It sounded like a sob, yet also like a release. Gu Siyuan. Shenyang looked at me with concern. I'm fine, I said. I finally understand we were all pawns. My father, He Jingheng, old Mrs. Heath, they were the players. But now the game is over. I'm going to be myself. I turned to him, looking at the man who had faced life and death with me. Shenyang, I said. After the restructuring of his shipping, I'm going to start a new company. Would you like to join me? Not as a husband, not as a partner, but just as what? As Shenyang, I said. Just as yourself. He looked at me and finally smiled. It was the first genuine smile since we met. The scar by his eye looking like a silver river in the moonlight. All right, he said. As Shenyang, I'll stay by your side. When the sun rose over the horizon, a rescue boat found us. I lay on the deck, looking up at the blue sky, clutching the last document I had taken from the Ghost, my father's confession. He wrote that while he was an accomplice in the 1996 shipwreck, he was willing to spend his life atoning for it to save me. I didn't know if I should forgive him. Perhaps I never will, but at least I know the truth, and that is enough. The restructuring hearing for his shipping was set for Monday morning. I wore a black suit and sat in the front row of the creditors section. Beside me was Shenyang, dressed in a navy blue suit with his hair trimmed short. He looked like a proper entrepreneur, which his new role as the co-founder of Voyage Group certainly demanded. Nervous? He asked. Excited? I replied. I've waited so long for this day. The core of the hearing was the distribution of his assets. As the largest creditor, I had the right to propose a restructuring plan. However, remnants of the He family still existed. He Jingheng's cousin, He Jingming, was trying to retain a controlling interest. Miss Gu. He Jingming was a middle-aged man in his 40s with an oily smile. I heard you had a history with my cousin. Such a shame he passed so suddenly. Mr. He. I smiled. If you're referring to the history at the wedding, it was indeed short, but it was enough for me to understand the He family tradition. Tradition, fraud, murder, and silencing witnesses. I counted on my fingers. Your cousin mastered it perfectly. I hope you don't repeat his mistakes. His smile froze on his face. The hearing began, and I submitted the plan. His shipping would be split into two. The high-quality assets would merge into Voyage Group, while the toxic assets would be liquidated to pay off debts. In exchange, I would drop all personal lawsuits against the He family members, including the investigation into He Jingheng's death. This is basically letting the He family off scot-free. He Jingming slammed the table. No, I said. This is letting the He family survive, Mr. He. The mess your cousin left behind is enough to put every member of your family in prison. My plan is a lifeline. I pressed the remote, and evidence began to play on the screen. He Jingheng's ledgers, master his confession, and the files from the Ghost. Each one was enough to destroy the family, but I chose to disclose them here rather than hand them to the police. What do you want? He Jingming's voice was hoarse. I want the name he's shipping to vanish, I said. I want every victim to be compensated and, I paused, I want the word Sinner carved onto He Jingheng's tombstone. The room fell silent. He Jingming looked at me as if I were a madwoman. You hate him, he said. Even though he's dead, you still hate him. No, I replied. I don't hate him anymore. To hate someone is to still remember them. What I want is to completely erase any trace of his existence so that a century from now, no one will know who He Jingheng was. The hearing lasted 6 hours. In the end, He Jingming signed the papers. His shipping was officially dissolved, and Voyage Group took over all operations. As we walked out of the conference room, it was already dark. Shenyang stood in the hallway looking at the city lights. Is it over? He asked. It's over, I said. But there's one last thing. He Jingheng's funeral was held 3 days later. Despite being a criminal, the He family still held a ceremony, a small affair with only a few relatives. I wore a long black dress and stood before the tombstone. The man in the photo looked young, his smile perfect, as if he had never harbored an ounce of malice. I won, I said. But you knew it would end this way, didn't you? From the day of the wedding, you knew I would destroy you. The wind blew. Bringing the sound of distant bells, I placed a white rose on the grave and turned to leave. Shenyang was waiting by the car, holding an umbrella as a light rain began to fall. Where to? He asked. The pier, I said. The first ship belonging to Voyage Group launches today. It was a container freighter and I had named it the Rebirth. Its hull was a pristine white, shimmering amidst the rain. Standing at the bow, I watched as the mooring lines were cast off and the foghorn let out a long low blast. President Gu, the newly appointed captain, approached. Everything is ready, awaiting your command. Set sail, I replied. Destination anywhere. The ship lurched into motion, slowly gliding out of the harbor. I stood on the deck, watching the city shrink in my field of vision until it became nothing more than a speck of light on the horizon. Shenyang walked up beside me and handed me a cup of hot coffee. Where to next? He asked. I don't know, I said. But wherever it is, it'll be a fresh start. He looked at me, his gaze tender. Gu, these past 3 months have felt like a dream, a nightmare. No, he said, the kind of dream you wake up into. I used to live for hatred. Now I want to live, he said, with you. I took his hand, looking out at the boundless sea. The rain had stopped and a crack in the clouds let the sunlight pour through, dyeing the water gold. Jingheng was dead, my father had vanished, and the He family was finished. I had lost a lot, but I had gained much more. Most importantly, I had found myself again. I wasn't a corporate undertaker, or Mrs. He, or the Gu family daughter. I was just Gu Siyuan, a woman reborn from the ashes. Shenyang, I said, let's get married. He froze. What, a real wedding? I clarified. No schemes, no deals, just because I want to marry you. He stared at me for a long time, so long I thought he might refuse, but finally he smiled, pulled me into his arms and held me tight. Fine, he said, but I have to propose first. Gu Siyuan, this isn't following the proper procedure. To hell with the procedure, I said. It's our life, we make the rules. The ship sailed across the sea, leaving a white wake behind it. Ahead was the vast ocean, the endless sky and infinite possibilities. This was the end and the beginning. A week before the wedding, I received a letter. There was no signature, but the handwriting was familiar, my father's. My hands trembled as I opened it to find only a note and an address. Yuan, if you're still willing to call me Dad, come see me here. If not, burn this letter and act as if I don't exist. Love always, Dad. The address was in a seaside town in the neighboring province, a 4-hour drive away. Shenyang wanted to go with me, but I declined. This is between him and me, I said. When I get back, we'll get married. The town was quiet, the sea breeze carrying a salty tang. I followed the address to a fisherman's cottage. My father was sitting in a rocking chair out front. He looked 10 years older, but he was alive. You came, he said. I didn't think you would. I didn't think so either, I said, sitting down across from him. Why did you fake your death? Because I couldn't face you, he replied. I've done so many wrong things. I've hurt so many people, including your biological parents. I thought that by helping you get rid of He Jingheng I could atone, but you realized I was just another pawn to you. He lowered his head, looking as if he had aged 20 years in an instant. I'm sorry, Yuan. I've spent my whole life using people. I used your parents' deaths to climb the ladder. I used the He family's influence to expand the shipyard, and I used you to take down He Jingheng. I don't deserve to be your father. You're right, you don't, I said. But you also raised me, loved me, and protected me. That much was real. He looked up, tears glistening in his eyes. I don't forgive you, I continued. The people who died, the people you hurt, they can't come back to life. But I won't hate you anymore. Hating is too exhausting. I need to move forward. I stood up and pulled a document from my bag. Sign this. What is it? A confession. I said, every crime you've committed is in here. Turn yourself in, go to prison and spend the rest of your life making amends. This is the last thing you can do for me. He stared at the paper, his hands shaking. Finally, he took the pen and signed his name on the last page. Yuan, he whispered. The wedding, can I go? No, I said, but I'll send you photos. Walking out of the cottage, the sunlight was blinding. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight on my shoulders lighten just a bit. It wasn't forgiveness, it was letting go. Back in the city, Shenyang was waiting for me at the pier. He looked like he hadn't slept, the dark circles under his eyes prominent. How did it go? It's settled, I said. He's going to turn himself in. There won't be any shadows hanging over our wedding. The wedding was held on the Rebirth. Only those closest to us were there, Xiao Lin, Lawyer Yu, and a few colleagues. No media, no crowds, no 300 onlookers. I wore a simple white dress, Shenyang wore a casual suit, the captain was our officiant, the seagulls were our guests, and the waves were our music. Gu Siyuan, Shenyang said. The first time I saw you was at the He Corporation's bankruptcy hearing. You were wearing a grey suit, talking like a machine gun, leaving the opposing counsel speechless. I thought to myself, this woman is terrifying. And now I think, he smiled, thank God you're terrifying, or we never would have one. We exchanged rings, real ones this time, with our names engraved on the inside. When the captain announced, you may kiss the bride, Shenyang pulled me close and kissed me gently as if I were something fragile. Gu Siyuan, he whispered in my ear, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you don't have to be terrifying. I just want you to be happy. You'd better work hard then. I teased, I'm notoriously hard to please. Married life was quieter than I expected. Voyage Group hit its stride. I handled the strategy while Shenyang managed operations. We rented a beachfront apartment, ran together every morning, and cooked together every night, even though his cooking was abysmal. President Gu Xiaolin called one day. I have some strange news. Go on. He Jingheng's cousin, wants to see you. He says he has some of Jingheng's personal effects that he must hand to you personally. I frowned. He Jingming had gone abroad after the restructuring. Word was he had failed in his investments and was drowning in debt. There was definitely a catch to his return. Schedule him for tomorrow at the office. He Jingming looked much thinner than the last time I'd seen him. His suit was rumpled as if he hadn't changed in days. He held a rusted iron box in his hands. This is Jingheng's private safe, he said. The password is your birthday. I've looked inside. You should probably see for yourself. I took the box and entered 0823, my birthday. The lock clicked open. Inside was a stack of photos and a letter. The photos were of me from various angles, working late at the law firm, grocery shopping, running in the park. The earliest one was dated 4 years ago, a full year before I had met He Jingheng. The paper was thin, the handwriting unmistakably He Jingheng's. Siyuan, if you're reading this, it means I lost, but I don't regret it, because this game was the only way I could get close to you. For years ago, I saw you in court for the first time. You were defending a small shipyard and you tore my lawyers to shreds. I knew then that I had to have you not as a mistress but as an opponent, the only person worthy of me. The betrayal at the wedding was my final test, to see if you had what it took to be my enemy. You passed more brilliantly than I could have hoped. Kill me or spare me, it's up to you. But remember, the only person in this world who truly understands you is me. Jingheng. I fed the letter into the shredder, watching it turn into dust. President Gu, He Jingming asked cautiously. You can go, I said. And don't ever show your face to me again. Relieved, he practically fled the room. I sat in my office, looking out at the sea, suddenly feeling a chill. Shenyang pushed the door open, holding 2 coffees. I heard He Jingming was here. Yeah, I said, taking the coffee. He brought some trash. I've already disposed of it. What kind of trash? The past, I said. He Jingheng's past and mine, it's all shredded now. Shenyang looked at me with concern, but he didn't pry. He just sat beside me and took my hand. What's for dinner? He asked. Whatever you make, I said. I'd even eat poison if you cooked it. He laughed, the scar at the corner of his eye looking like a silver river under the lights. 3 years later, Voyage Group had become the largest private shipping company in the Asia-Pacific, with a market value triple that of the old He Corporation. I was on the cover of Forbes with the headline, The Queen Who Set Sail from the Ashes, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that this morning I found out I was pregnant. Shenyang was in the kitchen fumbling with some eggs. I walked up behind him, wrapped my arms around him and placed the pregnancy test on the counter. What's this? He stared at the 2 lines, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to pure ecstasy. Gu Siyuan, keep it down. I laughed. You're going to make me deaf. He spun around and squeezed me so tight I thought I'd merge into his bones. The eggs in the pan burned, sending up a cloud of black smoke that set off the alarm. Fire. He panicked. Turn off the stove first. I sighed. You idiot. We stood on the balcony waiting for the smoke to clear. He touched my stomach, his movements as clumsy as if he were defusing a bomb. How many months? 6 weeks, I said. It's tiny, like a little pea. A pea, he repeated, his eyes shining. Our little pea. I leaned against his shoulder, looking at the distant sea. In the harbor, the Rebirth was unloading cargo, flanked by its sister ships, the Hope and the Courage. In 3 months, A new vessel, the New Life, would launch. It was our first LNG-powered ship, eco-friendly, efficient, the future of the industry. Have you thought of a name? He asked. If it's a girl, Shenyan, I said. For never forgetting, always answering. And if it's a boy, what? Shen Heng, I said, looking at him calmly. Heng as in perseverance and eternal, not that person's Heng. Shen Yang was silent for a long time before finally nodding. Okay, Shen Heng, let him know what kind of enemies his mother defeated, and what kind of courage she possesses. My phone rang. It was Xiao Lin. President GU, there's a strange man at the pier who wants to see you. He won't give a name, but he says you owe him a cup of tea. My heart skipped a beat. Down at the pier, the sunset had turned the water the color of blood. An old man sat on a bench, his back hunched but his posture stiff. I walked over and sat beside him. Dad, I said, you're out, commuted. My father said, good behavior, early release, 10 years. I served 10 years. He turned his head. He was old, his hair was white, but his eyes were still bright. Yuan, can I see your child? Not born yet, I said, but you can feel. His trembling hand touched my stomach and his eyes welled with tears. It's like a dream. I thought you would hate me until the day I died. I used to, I said, but now I'm just tired. Dad, we're all tired. Let's stop fighting, okay? Okay, he said. I found a little fishing village. I'll teach people how to fix boats. No business, no power. I'll just be an ordinary old man. Good, I said, standing up. Come over for dinner sometime. Shenyang cooks. It's terrible, but it's edible. He laughed, a sound like old wind chimes. Yuan, you've become gentle. People change, I said. You've changed too, Dad, take care. I turned back toward Shenyang, who was waiting by the car. The sunset stretched our shadows long, like two rivers merging into one. Who was it? He asked. An old friend, I said. It doesn't matter anymore. As the car started, I saw my father's silhouette getting smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared at the end of the pier. I didn't look back. Some goodbyes don't need tears. 3 months later, at the launch ceremony for the New Life, I wore a loose white suit, my bump clearly showing. Shenyang helped me onto the deck. Below us were hundreds of employees, reporters, and partners. President GU, a few words. The host handed me the microphone. I took it and looked at the faces in the crowd, expectant, admiring, curious. They wanted to know what the woman who climbed out of the ruins of her own wedding had to say. 3 years ago, I began. I stood here as we launched our first ship. Back then I called it a rebirth. Today I call this a new life, not just for the company or for me, but for everyone who has walked through the darkness. We were betrayed, we were hurt, and we were trampled upon. We hated, we retaliated, and we became as cold-blooded as those we loathed. But we did it all for one purpose, not to win but to stop losing. Today I stand here not as a shipping queen or a corporate undertaker, but simply as a woman, a wife, and a soon-to-be mother. I want to tell you that true strength isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about protecting what you love. It's not about never falling, it's about being able to stand up with a smile after you do. The crowd erupted in applause. Shenyang took my hand and whispered in my ear, "That was beautiful. Is the P kicking me?" "He is," I smiled. "He's saying, Dad, don't be embarrassing, let's get off the stage." As the ceremony ended, we stood at the bow, watching the lines drop and the foghorn roar. This was a new ship, no shadows of the past, no bloody history, just clean decks, bright cabins, and an endless voyage ahead. "Where to next?" Shenyang asked. "I don't know," I said. "But wherever it is, it's a new journey." He put his arm around my shoulder, and I leaned into him. The sea breeze blew past, salty and fresh like an ancient promise. Jingheng was dead, my father had grown old, the enemies had vanished and the friends had stayed. I had lost much, but I had gained everything. Most importantly, I had found myself, not perfect, not flawless, but real, a heart with wounds and scars, but a heart that was still beating. "Shen Yang," I said, "thank you." "For what?" "For not leaving that day at the pier," I said, "for walking through hell with me, for loving me." He looked down at me, his eyes as gentle as the sea. Yuan, thank you for showing me that at the end of hatred there isn't destruction, there is new life. The ship sailed across the water, leaving a white trail behind. Ahead was the vast ocean, the infinite sky, and endless possibilities. This was the end and the beginning, the end.